The sun had barely risen when I stepped out of the car and into the cemetery. I clutched the black shawl tighter around my shoulders as the cold wind brushed my face. People were gathering, friends, family, business partners, but I wasn't really seeing them. My eyes were only on the casket in the distance. My husband, my companion of 42 years. Gone. I walked forward in silence. I had no words. My heart was too heavy to speak. He had been fine just a few days ago, smiling, making jokes, telling me we'd take that trip to Italy next summer. Then one night, a heart attack. No warnings. No time for goodbyes. People began offering me their condolences. I nodded politely, murmured thank you, but I wasn't really hearing them. My mind was somewhere else. I kept waiting for him to walk in, smiling like always. But the cold wooden box in front of me kept telling the truth. As I stood beside his casket, something strange happened. My son, David, walked up to me. I expected him to hug me, maybe offer a few comforting words. But instead, he leaned in, close enough that no one else could hear, and whispered, "You'll get nothing." My heart skipped a beat. "What?" I asked softly, confused. He smirked. "It's all mine now. Just thought you should know before everyone starts pretending like you matter." He didn't wait for my reply. He just turned and walked off, shaking hands and smiling like nothing had happened. I was stunned. David had always been ambitious, even a little cold at times. But I never thought he could be this cruel. Not at my husband's funeral. Not to his own mother. I sat down on the front row of chairs, trying to process what I'd just heard. My hands were trembling. My late husband, Michael, had been the kindest man I ever knew. He always told me, "If anything ever happens to me, you'll be taken care of." I promise. But now that promise felt far away. Later that evening, after the guests left and the house fell silent, I heard David talking on the phone. He was laughing. "She looks so lost. She really thinks she'll get anything," he said. Then he added, "Once the will is read, this whole place will be mine. The house, the cars, everything. She'll have to leave soon." I stepped back from the door before he could see me. My knees felt weak, and I had to hold on to the wall to steady myself. This was no longer just about grief. It was about betrayal. I walked into my bedroom, closed the door, and stared at the old photo on the nightstand, me and Michael on our wedding day. He had his arm around me, smiling with all his heart. We built our life together. Every decision we made as a team. And now, our own son was trying to erase me from it all. I sat down at the edge of the bed and remembered something important. Something Michael had said to me just a few months ago. "If something happens, don't panic. The lawyer has instructions. There's something you'll need to see. Something meant just for you." Back then, I didn't think much of it. I thought he was just being cautious. But now it felt like a message from beyond. The next few days were a blur. David started acting like he owned everything. He fired the gardener, changed the locks on Michael's home office, began calling lawyers. He didn't even ask me if I was okay. He said things like, "We need to start selling off the smaller properties, and this house might be too much for you now." Like I was a guest in my own life. But I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I just watched, listened, and waited. I knew something he didn't. I had called Michael's lawyer, Mr. Grant, and scheduled a meeting. When I arrived at his office, he greeted me gently. He was in his 70s, had known Michael for years. As soon as I sat down, he handed me a flash drive and said, "Michael left this for you." He recorded it a few weeks before he passed. I held the drive in my hand for a moment, unsure of what I was about to see. When he played the video, tears welled up in my eyes. There was Michael, sitting in his office, looking tired but calm. "If you're watching this, then I'm gone," he began. "And if David is already circling like a vulture, then I need you to remember this. He does not have the final say. You do." He looked straight into the camera. "Everything I own, I earned with you by my side. You are the heart of this family. Not him. If he tries to take it all, don't be afraid to fight back. I've left instructions. I trust you." I couldn't stop crying. That video wasn't just a message. It was proof that I wasn't alone. When I got home that day, David was sitting in the living room with his laptop. "Where have you been?" he asked without looking up. "Just out," I replied calmly. "Well, don't get too comfortable. The lawyer is setting the date for the will reading. After that, things are going to change around here." I smiled softly. "Yes," I said. "They will." He smirked, thinking he'd won. But I knew something he didn't. And I was ready for what came next. The day of the will reading came faster than expected. David was up early, dressed in his expensive navy blue suit, pacing around the living room with a smug smile on his face. He looked more like a man attending an awards ceremony than someone heading to his late father's while reading. "You ready?" he asked me casually, sipping his coffee. I nodded. Inside, my heart was beating fast. But I kept my face calm. I had practiced this moment. I had watched the video from Michael more than 10 times. Every word of his message stayed with me like armor. On the drive to the lawyer's office, David kept going on about investments, real estate deals, and how he would modernize Dad's portfolio. He didn't once ask how I was feeling. Not once did he say, "Are you okay, Mom?" I stayed quiet. Let him talk. He thought I was weak. He thought I had no idea what was coming. But he was wrong. We entered the law office and were greeted by Mr. Grant. He looked at David and gave him a tight-lipped nod. But when he looked at me, his expression softened. "Please have a seat," he said, gesturing toward the large wooden table in the center of the room. David sat confidently, legs crossed, leaning back like he already owned the world. I sat quietly beside him, my hands folded in my lap. Mr. Grant began with the formalities. Then he opened a folder and took a deep breath. "As per Michael's instructions," he said, "we will first view a recorded message he left for both of you." David's eyebrows raised. "A video?" He wasn't expecting that. Mr. Grant inserted a flash drive into a laptop and turned the screen toward us. The video began. There was Michael again. But this time, he wasn't calm and gentle like in the first video he left me. This time, he looked serious. "If you're watching this, I'm no longer here," Michael began. "David, if you're sitting next to your mother right now, I hope you're treating her with the respect she deserves. But something tells me you're not." David shifted in his seat. "Son, you've always been sharp. Ambitious. But also arrogant and entitled. I've warned you more than once that greed would destroy you." David scoffed and crossed his arms. Mr. Grant paused the video briefly. "I advise you to listen carefully," he said. Then the video continued. "Everything I own, everything I built, was with your mother beside me. She stood by me when I had nothing. She worked, sacrificed, and gave her life to this family. That's why." Michael paused and looked directly into the camera. "That's why everything, yes everything, is left to her." David sat up straight. "You will inherit nothing," Michael continued, "unless your mother chooses to share it with you. That was my final decision. You may not understand it now. But one day, I hope you do." The screen went black. The room fell silent. David's face turned pale. He didn't move. Didn't blink. For the first time in a long while, he looked small. I sat there, calm and still, just like Michael had told me to be. Mr. Grant cleared his throat and opened the next document. "According to the legal will," he said, "the house, the business shares, all investments, and accounts totaling over $24.8 million will be transferred solely to Mrs. Elizabeth Warren." David's jaw tightened. "That must be a mistake," he said quickly. "Dad told me we'd split it." "There is no mistake," Mr. Grant replied. "This document was signed, witnessed, and notarized 6 months ago." David stood up. He was sick. He didn't know what he was doing. Mr. Grant looked unfazed. Mr. Warren was of sound mind. In fact, he recorded 3 separate confirmations. I have them all, including one audio file where he said, and I quote, "My son has become someone I don't recognize." I looked up at David and finally spoke. "You whispered at his funeral, you'll get nothing. Remember?" His face turned red. I continued, voice steady. "Turns out you were half right. But it wasn't me, it's you." David stormed out of the office without another word. The door slammed shut behind him, but I didn't flinch. Mr. Grant turned to me and gave a slight nod. "Your husband was a smart man," he said. "Yes," I replied. "And he knew who truly stood by him." That evening, I sat on the back porch, watching the sun go down. For the first time in days, the house was quiet again. Not cold or lonely, just peaceful. I thought about Michael, about how he had protected me, even after death. I missed him terribly, but I felt something else now, too. Strength. He had trusted me with his legacy, and I wouldn't waste that. From that day forward, I knew one thing for sure. I would never let anyone silence me again. The drive home from the lawyer's office was silent. Not because David was in the car, he had stormed off on foot, furious and humiliated, but because I needed that silence. I needed a moment to breathe, to feel the weight of everything that had happened. I had just inherited everything my husband had worked for. I had been handed power, not just over money, but over the truth. And yet, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like responsibility. Back at home, I unlocked the door and stepped into the house. The same house where I had raised David, where he took his first steps, where Michael and I laughed, argued, danced in the kitchen, where we built a life. And now it all felt different, heavy with memory. I walked to the study and sat down at Michael's old desk. The surface was polished, untouched since his passing. I opened the drawer where he used to keep his reading glasses and found a small, folded piece of paper. My name was written on the outside. I opened it slowly. Liz, if you find this before the will is read, then I trust you already know what I did. I didn't leave this money to you just because you're my wife. I left it because you were my strength. You never asked for anything, but you gave me everything. Take care of yourself. And if David ever truly changes, forgive him. But only if he earns it. Love you always. Michael. My eyes filled with tears. I didn't cry loudly, just quietly, letting them fall one by one onto the paper, like tiny pieces of grief I had finally let go. The next morning, I woke up early and made myself tea. I sat by the window, thinking he wouldn't show up. But around 9 a.m., the bell rang. It was David. He looked different. His eyes weren't full of anger now, just confusion, maybe even guilt. He stood at the door, hands in his pockets. I need to talk, he said. I didn't invite him in. I walked outside and closed the door behind me. I stood on the porch, arms crossed, waiting. He hesitated. You blindsided me, Mom. I raised an eyebrow. Did I? Or did you blind yourself thinking you could cheat your own mother and no one would stop you? He looked down. I just thought. Dad was always so hard on me. I thought this would be his way of finally trusting me. Trust you? I asked. You threatened me at his funeral, David. You said I'd get nothing. You smiled in that lawyer's office like it was your victory lap. His voice rose slightly. Because I thought I deserved it. And what exactly did you do to deserve it? I asked. He didn't answer. I took a deep breath and looked him in the eyes. Michael saw through you. He gave you a chance, many of them. But you were too proud to see it. David nodded slowly. So that's it? I'm cut off. No, I said. His head snapped up. But if you want help, you'll have to rebuild trust from scratch. And that starts with a question. Do you regret what you said? Or do you just regret being caught? He didn't answer right away. I regret both, he finally said. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. For once. The days that followed were quiet. David didn't come back again, and I didn't expect him to. I focused on things I hadn't done in years. I painted again. I went for long walks. I read books without checking my phone every hour, worried what new thing my son might be plotting behind my back. One morning, while sorting through Michael's files, I found something else, an old folder marked future plans. Inside were property papers, business investment records, and one more surprise, a charity proposal. Michael had wanted to start a foundation in his mother's name. He just never got around to it before he passed. It felt like a sign. I reached out to his old business partner, Richard, and said I wanted to complete what Michael had started. The two of us worked side by side for weeks, finalizing the documents, launching the Margaret Hope Foundation, a scholarship fund for underprivileged children. When I spoke at the opening event, I wore a blue dress Michael had always loved. I stood at the podium, heart full, and said, "My husband left me a fortune, but he also left me a mission. And this is what legacy really looks like." That night, as I returned home, I saw David's car parked outside. He wasn't at the door this time. He was sitting on the steps. "Nice speech," he said. I watched the live stream. I sat down beside him. We didn't speak for a minute. Just sat there in silence, listening to the wind rustle the trees. "I was a bad son," he said suddenly. I looked at him, but said nothing. "I don't want your money anymore," he continued. "I just want a chance to be someone Dad would be proud of." It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't perfect. But it was the first thing he'd said in years that didn't sound like a lie. I nodded. "One step at a time," I said. And we sat there together for the first time in a long time, not as enemies. Not as a war of generations, but as a mother and son. Weeks passed. The days began to feel lighter. Not because I had forgotten everything that happened, but because I had accepted it. Grief doesn't leave you. It just sits beside you more quietly over time. My house was no longer a battlefield. It was finally becoming a home again. I had started volunteering at a local school, using the foundation Michael and I established. It gave me purpose. I would sit with young students who reminded me of our early years, struggling, uncertain, full of potential no one had yet tapped into. Sometimes I'd look out the window at recess, seeing kids play and laugh, and I'd smile to myself. Michael would have loved this. David didn't disappear like I expected. He started calling every Sunday. Not to ask for anything, just to talk. The first few times were awkward. He'd tell me about his week, the small tech job he'd picked up, or how he started budgeting on his own for the first time in years. I didn't rush to trust him. He knew that, but he kept showing up. One afternoon, he dropped by with a book in hand, one of Michael's old business journals. "I found this in my storage," he said. "Thought you might want it." I held it gently, running my fingers over the worn leather cover. "He used to write in this every morning before breakfast," I said, voice soft. David nodded. "Yeah, I used to peek into it when I was a kid. I never understood any of it, until recently." We sat in silence again, not out of discomfort this time, but because sometimes quiet means understanding. A few days later, I got a call from Mr. Grant. "There's one more thing," he said. Michael had a backup video. Something he wanted played a few months after the inheritance was processed, only if you requested it. I hesitated, unsure if I wanted to open that emotional door again. But curiosity, and maybe a lingering ache, won. I went to the office the next morning. The lights were dimmed, just like before. Mr. Grant inserted the flash drive and pressed play. Michael appeared again. His face was peaceful this time. Not stern. Not serious. Just warm. "If you're watching this, Liz, then you've made it through the hardest part. I knew our son would test you. I knew grief would try to break you. But I also knew something else. You are stronger than both." He smiled. "We didn't raise David to be perfect, but we raised him to be capable of change. If he's still lost, protect yourself. But if he's come back to you, if there's even a glimpse of the boy we once knew, don't push him away. Help him remember who he used to be." He paused and leaned closer to the camera. "Because forgiveness, Liz, forgiveness is the only way this family survives without me." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I'll always love you. And I trust your heart more than anything I left behind." The screen faded to black. I sat in silence for a long time. That evening, I called David. "I saw another video," I said. He didn't say anything for a while. Then, do I want to know what it said? It said, "You have to earn your place back." But it also said I shouldn't give up on you. He exhaled. "Then I'll keep trying." Months passed. David visited more often. Sometimes he helped at the foundation. Sometimes we cooked together. One night, he brought over old family albums and said, "Let's go through these." We did. Photo after photo of birthdays, family trips, silly Halloween costumes, and quiet dinners filled the table between us. He laughed at one old picture where he was missing his 2 front teeth. "I look like a chipmunk," he said. "You were my favorite chipmunk," I replied. We both laughed. Then one night, something changed. I came home to find a note on my table, along with a small envelope. David had left it there after stopping by to drop off groceries. The note read, "Asterisk, I paid off my own debts today. First time in years. And I got offered a full-time role at the company I interned with. I'm not writing to brag. I'm writing because I want you to know, asterisk. I finally get it. I'm sorry for everything. And thank you for not giving up on me. Asterisk." Inside the envelope was a receipt and a small pin, Michael's favorite one. A silver hawk he used to wear on his lapel. David had found it. He didn't say how, but he gave it back. I held it to my chest, closed my eyes, and whispered, "You were right, Michael. He's still in there." A year later, the Margaret Hope Foundation expanded. We opened a second scholarship program, named after Michael. David was the one who gave the opening speech. He didn't read from notes. He just stood at the microphone and spoke from the heart. "I lost my way once," he said. "But thanks to the people who never gave up on me, I found it again." This foundation isn't just about helping others. It's about remembering that no matter how far you fall, you can always stand again, if someone gives you a reason. The crowd applauded. I stood in the back, tears in my eyes, holding the silver hawk pin in my hand. In the end, Michael didn't just leave money. He left lessons, warnings, hope. He gave me the power to protect myself. And he gave David the chance to become someone better. It wasn't a happy ending. It was something better. A real one. One we earned. Together.